Hello everyone and welcome to Motorcast. Today you'll be listening to myself and of course the other BTCC host, Matt 212 or 212 as he's now known. Isn't that right?
Oh, it's so annoying.
Oh man, for having that as your number, you really don't like the 200 bit. Anyway.
Some people, I don't get how they can get it wrong, but at the end of the day, what can you do? I'll just suffer through the pain.
Oh man. Well, as you know, as you all have guessed, this is the BTCC podcast, and we're back again, coming from Croft, which is my local circuit. Unfortunately, I was unable to get out there and watch the racing in the flesh, but we did see some brilliant racing, albeit on the TV. We'll get onto that in a little bit, but first off, I just want to talk about obviously the events that took place in qualifying. It was a very, very large accident between, I think it was 12 cars, resulting from, I think, was it one of the Fords leaking oil after hitting the grass, and it was a wet track. All of which doesn't add up to a very nice situation. We saw Aaron Taylor-Smith. I think he's got a broken leg. And Jeff Smith and Luke Davenport are both still in hospital with they are in a serious but stable condition. So all of us from the Motorcast team wish the best for every driver caught up in that situation. And we hope to see them have a speedy recovery. But the story of qualifying, apart from that, was the fact that Ash Sutton just seemed to have it glued to the track compared to everyone else and was a massive half a second ahead of Colin Turkington, his nearest challenger. Now, obviously, in the last podcast we did praise Ash Sutton quite a bit, and well, it seems it was all good praise, doesn't it, Matt?
Yeah, it seems that once again, obviously, our praise must obviously be boosting his performances. I think it's only safe to say, because so far this season, once again, I think we're going to be giving Ash Sutton a lot of positive comments, and obviously by half a second as well. Obviously, the rain sort of impacts that with how much time, obviously, the differences between the cars, obviously, does make half a second probably a little less special, but obviously in the BTCC, that's still a ginormous gap.
Oh, yeah. I mean, with BTC standards, you usually see in cars less than a tenth between each other, so to see someone have a gap of that extent is really quite impressive. As well as that, we saw Colin Turkington opening at the top, and in third place we did see Matt Jackson taking advantage of those wet conditions. Championship leader Gordon Shedden did start in fourth, and because of the result of because of the crash involving Aaron Taylor-Smith, we therefore saw Josh Cook taking his seat in the MG. Obviously drove for them last year, and in Josh Cook's seat and in the Focus, we saw Dennis Strandberg, the Swedish racing driver, who I admittedly don't know really anything about, take his place. So on to the first race, and it was a very, very entertaining race, and we saw a race-long battle between Ash Sutton and Colin Turkington up at the front, which was possibly escalated by Ash Sutton taking the option tyre at the start for the first race, which, you know, the commentators at the beginning were perhaps questioning his decision to start on the option tyre, but it seemed to work out, didn't it, Matt?
Just about in the end, in all fairness to him. You know, obviously, he knew that first race would probably be the toughest, obviously, with that option tyre, but I think, you know, it was very much a decision to try and get it out of the way nice and early, and I wonder if he was trying to preempt Colin Turkington, use it as well. Obviously, Colin, the king of Croft, as we'll probably talk about a little bit more. But yeah, obviously, I think he was expecting Colin Turkington to go with the option tyre as well, but he did obviously just about hold on to the race win.
Yes, it was very fine margins, and it did seem to be a move that worked out for Ash Sutton, because the option tyre, at least for Croft this weekend, was a significantly harder compound than the other tyres, so to get that out the way in what were really kind of unfavourable conditions for harder tyres, with it being, you know, it was the track was fairly green after the rain from Saturday, and it was very windy as well. Not a lot of sunshine either, so I think that kind of makes it seem a lot better. But I promise we're going to stop praising Ash Sutton to quite the extent as we're doing now. What we did see though is Matt Jackson hang on to third, which is very impressive considering the how bad the Focus has been doing this season. And do you think this is perhaps a turning point for Matt and the Shredded Wheat Focus team?
I think definitely, Matt actually spoke about it. I think it was after the first race, saying that obviously the BTCC did understand that the Ford did have a clear disadvantage to the rest of the field, and obviously after last time out, they were allowed to run extra boost on the car, and I think that's really let Matt Jackson prove how good he is once again. Obviously getting third place in that first race did very, very well for him, and just proved that Ford isn't probably as slow as I think a lot of us really thought it was.
It's still a little bit off the pace though, I think, even with the boost improvements that they've been allowed to get away with. But nevertheless, it kind of set the tone for Matt's weekend, which turned out, we'll talk about that in a little bit. Up next, we then had Rob Collard with a very strong race, making his way up to fourth. And Gordon Shedden, as I think we kind of predicted last week, started in the top 10 and finished in the top 10, which for a car running, 75 kilos of ballast is a very solid result. Looking down the field, we then had Andrew Jordan finishing pretty solidly in the top 10 and 6th. Tom Ingram down in 8th, of course, running quite a bit of ballast, but I think he might be a little bit disappointed with that. The Toyota just didn't seem to have the pace at Croft all weekend. Obviously, it is a rear-wheel drive track and always has been, but still he's quite a way off even the fastest front-wheel drive runner, which was Matt Jackson.
Definitely, obviously, after an absolutely appalling race last time out, he really needed to try and get right back at the top here today. And unfortunately for him, especially in that first race, it just wasn't able to happen. And you really wonder, obviously, what his mindset's going to have to be coming into Snetterton, because obviously he had such a strong position so early on, and it was really looking like both of us were saying that it could really be his season to try and win, but it's really unravelled incredibly quickly. And 2.8 seconds off the fast lap of that race. I think there might be actually a small glitch looking at the rest of the field there. But definitely, obviously, not what Tom Ingram needs, and he really needs to come stronger out next time.
Yeah, I think he's definitely in a bit of a low patch at the moment, and considering how strong he looked at the start of the season, is there maybe perhaps a little bit of the other teams catching up to Toyota, or perhaps cottoning on to their pace a little bit?
I think, obviously, last time out, he was incredibly unlucky. I think he did get involved in incidents in all 3 races there, and I think that's really knocked him back. But he's still the strongest Toyota. Obviously, we saw Rob Austin down in P12. They're also having a fairly decent showing in the end. But I think it's just been a couple of really bad weekends for those guys, and they just need to pick themselves back up. And although obviously there always is the element of a bit of luck when it comes to the BTCC as well, when it comes to incidents and things, Tom just needs to try and get back into the zone and hopefully push on for more wins later on in the season.
Now, obviously Tom did have a little bit of a busy day, but we will get on to that in a little bit. And of course I just want to put in a little mention of Jason Plato, who, despite having a bit of a dodgy start, managed to make his way back up to 10th. So do you think, I assume Subaru have sorted out the problems with their Levorg, because there was talk of the car having a bent chassis, so perhaps they've gotten that sorted. But is it too late now for Jason Plato to make any kind of mark on this championship?
In short, definitely yes, and I think that wasn't helped by the fact he actually made the mistake on lap 1, which really obviously meant he was playing catch up for him, obviously. But I think definitely Plato, he's going to have to sort of not give up with this season, but really try and focus on next season now. Obviously, that team should probably try to work for Ash Sutton now as such, and just try and make sure he can aim for as high as he can possibly get in the rest of the races. And I think Plato and the other two are basically just going to have to work around Ash Sutton now for the rest of the season and hopefully come back stronger next time around.
I think if anyone who knows Jason Plato knows he will not be happy playing second fiddle. But it's just, I think it's been a bit of a disappointing season for Plato, and maybe he can do, he can try and help Ash Sutton go for what seems to be a decent championship run for the young lad. Let's go an honourable mention. We've got Ollie Jackson up there in P11 in the Audi A3. We never really see the Audis up near the top, and that's a bit disappointing for me because I think the car it probably should be a little bit quicker than it actually is, and probably could benefit from perhaps a little boost like the Subaru and the Focus have gotten, but nevertheless a decent result there for Ollie Jackson. Now on to race number 2. In that race we had the King of Croft, Colin Turkington, once again winning at his favourite track, and I think was this the 50th race win for West Surrey Racing using BMWs. I think I'm right with that.
Yeah, it was. I think it also looked like they were trying to get a 1-2 with the way that Colin Turkington sort of backed Ash Sutton into Rob Collard, but I'm sure obviously we'll talk about that a bit more. But yeah, Colin Turkington obviously taking the race win from second on the grid. It was fairly textbook for him. He got a better start than Ash Sutton, was able to basically just lead the rest of the race, I feel.
Yeah, obviously the ballast probably not helping Sutton in any way this race, running the maximum 75 kilos. Turkington though, no, he was running the I think 66 kilos, so obviously he wasn't particularly handed a better hand. But we did see, of course, Rob Collard hustle in the back of that Subaru pretty much for the whole race, and then like you said, I think Colin was trying to back Ash into Robert. But yeah, then further down we did have Gordon Shedden once again solidly in the top 10, running a bit less ballast, and he was in a he was in a fight with Andrew Jordan for a lot of that race, as was Jason Plato once again making his way up the field. But we did see Matt Jackson struggle a little bit in his Focus. But I think one of the main stories from this race was Tom Ingram going out very, very early on with what looked like suspension damage. What did you make of that, Matt?
Obviously, once again, really not what Tom Ingram needs, but it was on lap 1. And I did see actually the corner before, there was a brief moment on the camera angle where you could see the wheel was basically sideways in comparison to where it was meant to be. It sort of then straightened back out, and I don't think the commentators picked up on it right at that moment, but obviously straight into the next braking zone, the wheel went sideways again, and that was Tom Ingram out of the race, really obviously before it had begun for poor Tom once again.
I don't think Tom picked up on that because he seemed to be going into the final sector of the track at full speed and then was completely caught off by effectively like you said, the suspension completely changing direction on that rear right quarter. We did also see Matt Neal struggle. I think that was a result of a race 1 incident though.
He had to retire in race 1 due to a puncture, unfortunately for Matt, and it was basically just trying to get as far back up the field as he possibly could to just put himself in a better position for race 3. Doing
a decent job though, getting himself up to 18th and putting him in a decent run for race 3. Who else we see? We see Ollie Jackson once again proving himself very, very good in race 2s, and Rob Austin once again right on the back of Matt Jackson towards the end of that race. Overall, it was a very, very good race too, and it really kind of set us up nicely for the final race, which I think was probably one of the best. Race 3s we've seen in a while. Just out of nowhere, we had Matt Jackson winning the race. Perhaps helped a little bit by the reverse grid going extremely in his favour. But nevertheless, do you agree that that's a good result for Matt? I think that's the first win for Ford this year.
It is definitely obviously the first win for Ford this year, and obviously for Matt Jackson, you can't get better than a race win there, so obviously he can be very happy with that. But obviously there were some interesting strategies, to say the least, coming from Matt Jackson in that car. And definitely, obviously we saw straight away, I think it was on lap 1, he completely pushed Ollie Jackson out of the lead of the race. And obviously Ollie Jackson would not have been happy with that, but Matt was very much, I need to get into the lead and try and run away as quickly as I can. And he managed to do so in the early stages, but then obviously later on we saw Ash Sutton close back up, but I'm sure we'll talk about that later on.
Yes, obviously a bit of a controversial incident between Matt Jackson and Ollie Jackson. I don't know if they're brothers. I think if they were brothers, there'd be a lot more family arguing going on now. But like you said, Ash Sutton did have a bit of an interesting race. Was this the race where he overtook Jason Plato and kind of suspicious circumstances, I guess you could say.
I think it was very much for Ash Sutton there. Obviously, we spoke about Plato already on, about how he's not a man that will quite happily play second fiddle to his teammate. And Ash Sutton, it was safe to say he knew that, so he went for quite an aggressive move, but obviously it was entirely fair. Down the inside into the final corner. It was one of those moves where you wouldn't want to make it over and over because it could quite easily go wrong. But it was very much, I'm having this position now, just you're going to have to back out before you get pushed out wide or lose even more positions further down the field.
Yes, I did actually catch a little bit of Twitter, an argument with a person who I league race with was having a bit of a Twitter argument with Jason Plato about this. It did get resolved in a nice way. They all made up at the end, but what the gist I got from Jason to why I was a bit perhaps not so happy with the incident was the fact that Ash had overtaken him with two wheels off the track at the hairpin, which according to Jason, and of course we don't know any of this. We weren't in the driver's briefing. In the driver's briefing, apparently they were told they had to overtake with all four wheels on the track at the hairpin. So, since Ash Sutton hasn't been disqualified, I assume they've either used some discretion there or that was not perhaps true. But nevertheless, it did kind of allow Ash Sutton to go and really press for Matt Jackson. At times he was taking 3/4 of a second out of him a lap. But it did mean that behind them we did see a really, really quite good battle from third down to, seventh, 8th, where we had Rob Austin conducting the train, you could say. Very, very close race between him and Plato, and, the last lap pretty much summarised that, didn't it, Matt?
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, the gap at the end really just shows how well, obviously, it was obviously a very close battle. But Rob Austin, so far this season, he's had a couple of really good highlights, but I think that definitely will be one of them. Unfortunately, he did miss out on the podium right at the very end, which I was gutted for him. But it was definitely a very good show from Rob Austin there. Obviously, he got the reverse grid that really played into his hands. Unfortunately, he did drop down the order ever so slightly, and obviously we saw that incredible move by Ash Sutton around the outside at turn 1 once again. But yeah, Rob definitely should be happy with P4 there, but I'm sure he'd be disappointed that he missed out on the podium.
Yeah, and it was an extremely fine margin as well for Jason to just pip him at the line. It was just incredible to see the drag race down to the finish, and he was unlucky, only 5 thousandths off a podium, so it's got to be a bit of a bitter pill to swallow. Further down, of course, Matt Neal we had just on the back of Rob Austin at the finish, making an incredible comeback from 18th on the grid to finish 5th, and then we had the trio of BMWs coming home 6th through to 8th. Gordon Shedden once again, despite the ballast and the way we've been saying he could possibly drop down this weekend, he's finished every single race in the top 10. Not particularly solid points this time round, only finishing 9th, but obviously every little helps. And despite Ollie Jackson obviously getting a little bit of the elbows at the start of the race from Matt Jackson, still managed to finish 10th for what's been an incredibly solid weekend for the Audi team. Looking down, we had Tom Ingram making up a decent number of positions, but not, unfortunately for him, not getting into the points. And Jack Goff, who's unfortunately had a bit of a, not a brilliant weekend here. Don't think he's finished any race in the points, so perhaps a weekend to forget for Goff, who was looking a bit optimistic coming into the weekend, and even after qualifying, despite finishing down the bottom, was looking eager to try and make up some positions, but unfortunately just wasn't the case for him. Now, Matt, obviously one of the major scenes in the final race was the incident between Matt Jackson and Ash Sutton on the line, and I think, are we on the same boat as this? I kind of think that Matt Jackson was, since it's touring cars, I think he was okay to kind of nudge him onto the grass, but is your opinion any different from mine?
I think, it was quite clear that Matt Jackson definitely was having that race win, and he was willing to do anything to take it there. But obviously, Ash Sutton, he knew what he was trying to do coming through the final corner. He was either going to try and undercut him or go for a brilliant run around the outside. And Matt Jackson, for the second race there, was more than happy to push other people onto the grass. And I think, for Matt, obviously he didn't get disqualified from the race. He'll be quite happy to take home that race win, but I don't think he'll be on Ash Sutton's Christmas card list anymore.
No, I severely doubt that. But I think in F1, perhaps, you probably would have seen a penalty there for Matt Jackson, but touring cars is a slightly different business, and I get the argument for this is that Ash Sutton would have known that Matt Jackson would have pushed him out wide for going out there. So I think Matt Jackson was within his rights to do that. Perhaps, it is a bit harsh, but you don't, in touring cars, you don't go for an overtake around the outside anywhere because you will just get pushed off. We've forgotten to talk about one of the major incidents in race one. That was the two Subarus coming together, Josh Price and James Cole. What did you make of that?
There wasn't really, obviously, any good angles to get a gist of it. Obviously, I think the best one that really shows was just those two going, near enough backwards at the final corner. But obviously, second year in a row, Subaru have had an incident, obviously, at Croft, and they will not be happy with that. That really cost both of their drivers some solid points. Obviously, the first time we've seen those Subarus actually, apart from Ash Sutton, look competitive out of the whole season, and they'll be really gutted that really did knock them back for the rest of the day.
Yeah, and obviously it's a lot of work for the team as well to get those cars prepared, or to try and get them into the later races. I'm just checking, did they get them? Yes, good work by the Subaru guys. They did get both cars ready for race 2, so credit where credit's due. That was a really good, that's incredible from the Subaru mechanics, actually. But I think that's about it. Dennis Strandberg, obviously the man's subbing in for Josh Cook's previous Focus, doing a decent job in his first weekend out. Actually, we need to... Who have we got? Adam Morgan not having a particularly strong weekend either. But I think we'll call it a day there. Obviously, a very, very entertaining weekend this weekend at Croft. But it is a long wait until the next race. We're into the summer break. Who could believe it? It's come and gone that quickly as the first half of the season. And it'll be at Snetterton. And we'll be back probably... the race is the 30th of July. We'll probably be back on Motorcast discussing the BTC in early August. So, until then, from me and Matt, it's goodbye.